Hello. Sorry, I didn't notice you over my totally not creepy tomato mug. I needed to open this video with a quick announcement. If you're wondering where the YouTube streams have gone, they've moved to twitch.tv/Aaron Wigwam. Link down below in the description. I am not moving streams back to YouTube. I'm sorry, guys. I've had too many problems with YouTube in the past, and recently it hasn't even been allowing me to access the back end where I stream from, where I research my analytics from. I'm totally locked out. Every time I have to reset my browser, reinstall my browser, I get in for like a day and then it locks me back out again. And there's just been so many problems with YouTube over the years and not promoting small streamers and stuff that Twitch is just, it's just a better platform for me. So if you want to keep watching the streams, please consider joining me over on Twitch. It's better for me and it's better for the viewers too. It's just an overall better platform from streaming. But don't worry, YouTube's not going away. I'll still be posting weekly what's ups. I'll still be posting regular full-length Wigwam videos again, and I'll be posting stream highlights at least once a month as much as I'm able to. So if you want to keep watching streams, go to Twitch. If you just want to keep watching videos, you're in the right spot. And speaking of which, let's get right into this video that I filmed like 2 months ago and never finished editing, so it's gonna look a lot different. But let's get into it. It's still a good video. Hope you guys enjoy. What's up, beautiful people? I figured today we could do another list, because lists are fun. I wanted to rank the top 10 indie games of all time. As many of you know, I basically founded this channel on the idea of reviewing and playing indie games, and while I don't get to focus on that as much as I'd like to anymore, I still have tons and tons of experience playing many indie games. I'd like to talk about my 10 favorite of all time and why these games are such a cut above the rest. So let's get into it. Coming in at number 10, we have Lisa, the Painful RPG. Now, you guys have seen me play this game on stream. Maybe some of you remember way back, I've even Let's Played this game years and years ago. I've played it many times. It's a wonderful, twisted, dark, and most importantly, perverted little game. For those of you that don't know, Lisa is a bit based on like Earthbound style gameplay, wacky humor, just a lot of weirdness rolled up into one really unique and entertaining package. It also features actually a fantastic RPG battle system, tons and tons of characters that you can recruit to your team with lots of fun combinations and different focuses that you can build your team around. There's something like 20-30 playable characters that you can add to your roster and switch out. It almost feels like Pokemon. There's so many different possible characters you can play as. The humor is kind of like a dark and twisted version of Undertale. It's weird, it's wacky, it's very funny at times, and then it'll immediately flip over into a moment that feels just like a gut punch, like somebody punched you up into the stomach, up into your heart, and then just ripped it out as these horrible, tragic moments laced across a wonderful and beautiful and ultimately really sad story. Really, Lisa is a powerful game. It's funny, it's fun to play, and it's absolutely just devastating at times. It's such a beautiful mix of different emotions, and it hits every single one of them so well. I cannot recommend Lisa enough. If you haven't checked it out yet, do yourself a favor and go pick it up. Coming in at number 9 is a game that pretty much I think no one ever played except me, which is Elliott Quest. You may have heard me talk about it before if you're a long-time watcher of this channel, but I'm gonna keep talking about it until more people have finally played Elliott Quest. Elliott Quest is like Zelda 2 if Zelda 2 was really good. Out of all the Zelda-inspired indie games I've ever played, Elliott Quest is probably by and far the one that captures the spirit and progression of Zelda the best. You go to new areas, you fight new monsters, you fight bosses, you explore dungeons, you get new items that unlock new parts of the world, and it's all very creative. The way that the items function with the world, the things that they let you do, the way that you can combine them with each other to solve puzzles is all very clever, which makes you feel clever as a player, which is a really powerful feeling. That's one of the reasons why Zelda's always been such a great game series. Really, it's just a very creative, Zelda-style indie game, and that should be more than enough to sell most gamers on it. Please go check out Elliott Quest. Coming in at number 8 is Undertale. Undertale is a game that I probably don't really need to talk about too long, so I really won't. You know Undertale, everybody knows Undertale. It's delightful, it's hilarious, it's very touching, it's a very cute game while also having a nice emotional impact. It totally changed the way that we view the capabilities of what combat could be. We created a game where the gameplay and fighting isn't even fighting. We're saving people, we're being pacifist, or you're a horrible genocidal murderer. But most people don't do that until like the 3rd or 4th playthrough. A host of memorable characters. It's a game that's taken the internet by storm and possibly, I would say, the most popular indie game of all time. So I'll just say that I also enjoyed Undertale and I put it at number 8 on my list. Coming in at number 7 is Shovel Knight. While Undertale may be the most popular indie game of all time, if any game could give it a run for its money, it would be Shovel Knight. Shovel Knight has reached insane amounts of popularity. Just like Undertale, you can see different costumes and trophies of it in Smash Bros, which is really like, that's how you know you've made it. If you're in Smash Bros, you're a legit game. Shovel Knight started off as this amazing, tight, solid platforming adventure that perfectly captured the heart of so many beautiful NES games while also elevating that gameplay to entirely new heights. And while it's heavily based on many NES games, it's not too heavily based on any one individual NES game. It has this unique personality all of its own. It feels like its own unique game made with love. And like I said, it takes everything that it does and it just makes it better. It's not just an homage, but it's a furthering of the genre itself. And that was just when it was Shovel Knight alone. The DLC for Shovel Knight could almost be considered to be its own separate game that's good enough. If they had chosen to, they could have released them entirely separate from Shovel Knight at all. And yet they chose to include them as DLC. Shovel Knight is one of the absolute perfect games for anyone who is a lover of classic NES-style gameplay and indie games alike. If you haven't, for some reason, tried Shovel Knight up to this point, play it, idiot. Coming in at number 6 is Limbo. Now, Limbo is one of the very early indie games. I remember this was personally my first real introduction into indie games as a genre and what they could offer, and how they could push the envelope as artistic works in a way that mainstream AAA games just weren't allowed to, and really still for the most part are not allowed to. I love Limbo so much I have it tattooed onto my body. Limbo's gameplay is very solid, a fun and creative way to solve through puzzles and interact with your environment. It's really just a straight, linear shot through the world. You're not exploring dungeons or anything of that Zelda or Metroidvania style. You're really just on a long journey from start to finish, and you're just solving one obstacle at a time until you get to the end. Where Limbo really shines is its very simplistic yet wonderfully well done black and white visuals that give this tone of eeriness and despair across the whole game. They really set up these themes and these emotions that you can feel in every step you take inside of Limbo. The game also has one of those subtle background stories that's wonderful and beautiful and sad and tragic and totally missable if you're not paying attention. It takes place totally in the background through little hints and pieces along the way, just a simple beginning and ending scene that really set up the entire journey and bring it to a nice, neat conclusion. It really shows you what creative storytelling in games is capable of. Hollow Knight is possibly, if not definitely, the greatest Metroidvania of all time. I think it beats out the original Super Metroid. Much like Shovel Knight, it takes a series of gameplay mechanics and ideas that it loves, and instead of just paying homage to them, it brings them to new heights. It does so much for a genre that it's more than just a love letter. It becomes the crowning jewel of the genre itself. Hollow Knight is an absolute steal of a game. It retails at $15, which to this day blows my mind. You can easily, from just the base game alone, with little to no exploration, get a 30 incredibly enjoyable hours out of this game. But then you add on DLC, the exploration, all of the side projects you do, replaying the game over and over again. It has huge replayability value, getting getting secret endings, all of these things can easily push your playtime into 50, 60, or even if you're a real fanatic, getting triple-digit hours out of this game is not unfeasible, and it's all for $15. It feels unfair to the developer. I don't know why they sell this game for $15. It blows my mind. If you have ever enjoyed a Metroidvania game and ever wanted to play another Metroidvania game, you will not find a better one for your money than Hollow Knight. It will give you hours of enjoyment. It has a great progression system as far as combat is concerned, the way you level up your character. It has just this wonderful, wonderful feedback loop and progression as both your skill and your characters get better and better across hours of gameplay. The world is an incredible, artistic, immersive experience. If you like the artistic and strong visuals and tones of a game like Limbo, then you will absolutely love what Hollow Knight is doing as well. I could gush about Hollow Knight for a very long time, and it's only number 5 on the list. So let's keep going. Coming in at number 4 is Bastion. Bastion is such a wonderful game, keeping with the theme of games that have these strong artistic tones, games that really blur the line of a playable experience and an artistic expression, games that, to me, prove that video games as an art medium is totally possible and being done already. Bastion is this wonderful top-down isometric action role-playing game with a really fun progression system, tons of fun, interesting weapons to experiment with along the way that change the way the game is played, the way that you choose to fight enemies, the strategies that you will use across your gameplay, and more importantly than that, it has one of the best indie stories you can find on the market, and really maybe one of just the best stories in gaming. The story is told by who is hands down the greatest narrator voice of all time, guiding you along your journey through this post-world ending collapse as you're trying to put together the pieces, not to fix or save the world, but just to move on with your life. Coupled together with some of the greatest musical soundtracks available, Bastion is just an experience. It's much like watching a really, really unique movie. It's just something that's hard to describe, because whereas sometimes you play a game and it's all about that technical skill, that getting better, and while I do love games like that, with Bastion, it's just about going on this journey. To me, Bastion is up there with The Last of Us in this kind of game that almost feels like playing a movie in the best way possible. Bastion and its spiritual successor Transistor are both essential indie games for anyone who is a fan of the genre, and like every other game on this list, you should go play it. Coming in at number 3 is The Binding of Isaac. The Binding of Isaac is a powerhouse of an indie game. No other indie game, I think, has ever managed to steal so much collective time from so many different players across so many different years. The original Binding of Isaac is almost a decade old. The Binding of Isaac Rebirth, which is what really started to gain some mainstream popularity, is from 6 years ago now, and the game is still getting massive DLC updates to this day across all platforms. They've said for the last 3 DLCs in a row that this would be the last DLC, and they just can't help adding more items, synergies, rooms, bosses, and monsters, and other gameplay endings and characters with every single update. The game just never ends, and even without this tons and tons and tons of new content, you can already get hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours out of what most people would consider to be the gold standard for roguelike gameplay. Truly, roguelikes as a whole owe their mainstream popularity that they have today to The Binding of Isaac. And while it may not have created the genre, it certainly defined what the genre was capable of. Love it or hate it, and most people, myself included, absolutely love it. Binding of Isaac is a game that most roguelites are unfairly held to that standard. Like, games that aren't even related to The Binding of Isaac, if they're roguelike, do they have item synergies like Binding of Isaac? How many rooms does it have? What kind of bosses does it have? How does it stack up to The Binding of Isaac? I have a low amount of gameplay time in The Binding of Isaac relative to many other people out there. I'm only at about 400 to 500 hours myself across my 2 platforms. Plenty of people have literally over 1,000 hours into The Binding of Isaac, and it's not even that hard to do. Simply boot it up, get yourself addicted, and 200 hours later, when you're finally completing all the last little cards and stuff, you'll really understand, wow, The Binding of Isaac is crack, and it is. It is, and the best way possible. It is crack incarnate. Coming in at number 2, it's Night in the Woods. I love games with a strong narrative. I love a game that can really engross me into a really well-told story. And Night in the Woods really is more story than gameplay. Night in the Woods is basically nothing really more than walking around and occasionally playing a series of weird and wacky different mini games, but the amount of heart and personality that are put into every single character that you come across in this town is so beautiful, and they are all so memorable. Not even just the main cast of characters, but the side characters you will absolutely fall in love / obsession with as you go across the story. You'll find yourself day after day going to talk to Selmers, getting a new poem. You'll go talk to Lori Myers every day, see how she's doing, talk to her about her life. You'll make friends with Germ. You'll decide whether or not you want to rekindle your friendship with Greg more, or if you want to rekindle your friendship with Byeeee more. And you'll want to replay the game as soon as you're done, because whoever you chose, you're gonna immediately want to go choose the other character. My initial 2 playthroughs were almost entirely different. Apart from a series of key moments that spread across, everything in between was entirely different and just as emotionally rewarding as the other storyline. Both storylines are incredibly good. This game also features some of the best LGBT representation out of any game, full stop. It also handles a great experience with people dealing with mental illness, people dealing with wanting to escape their small town vibes. Whoever you are, whatever personal struggles you go through as a person, there is something in Night in the Woods that you can relate to. And that's really how this game has created such a passionate fan base. Because no matter who you are, there is a character or a struggle somewhere in this game that you will absolutely relate to. And finally, my number 1 indie game of all time is Celeste. Celeste really has it all. Gameplay mechanics that are very technically proficient but fun to play with and an extreme joy to master. Worlds and levels that are challenging, creative, and constantly introducing new things into the game, even 30, 40 hours into gameplay. A post-game that is almost as long, well, depending on how skilled you are, maybe even longer, than the original base game, and a story that is cute, touching, endearing, and inspirational. I love platforming games. I grew up on platforming games. I'm an old Super Nintendo head from my childhood, and those were the games that were popular when I was a kid. Every game had to be a platforming game, basically, in some capacity. And Celeste is the best platforming game I have ever played. It beats Super Mario World. It's better than all of those. Like many indie games that we've talked about previously on this list, it takes a genre that it loves and it elevates it to absolutely new heights to become, in my opinion, the greatest example of that genre. Celeste is, to me, not just one of the greatest indie games of all time, but one of the greatest platforming games of all time. Anybody who's ever enjoyed a platforming game absolutely must play Celeste. Every level is creative, every mechanic is fun, everything about Celeste to me is really a 10 out of 10, and that is why it is my number 1 indie game of all time. Alright guys, well that was it. That was my top 10 favorite indie games of all time. I could list literally another 20 indie games that I love and think are amazing. Games like Stardew Valley, games like Super Meat Boy, games like Cuphead, games like The Messenger, games like A Hat in Time. But I just wanted to narrow it down to the top 10. Maybe if you guys want and you enjoyed this video and you ask down below, I will maybe do a follow-up video of some, notable mentions. Maybe I'll do 11 through 20 because there's so many wonderful creative indie games out there. And I think indie games really, more than anywhere else in gaming right now, is where creativity is flourishing the best. New ideas are being allowed to be explored, creative, artistic ways to tell stories. So many envelope-pushing ideas are all taking place within indie games, and that's why I've really fallen in love with the genre, and these are the games that made me feel that way in particular. Let me know what your favorite indie games were down below, as well as like, comment, subscribe. It sounds cliche, but it's incredibly helpful to me if you do those things, as well as if you enjoyed this video, show it to somebody else. Show it to your grandma. I bet she would love me. Older people love this face. It's just true, man. People's moms, when I was growing up, they loved me. They all wished I was their kid. and grandmas doubly so. So show this video to your grandma. I love you all. Catch you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.